I am not here to debate with anyone. I have devoted all of my adult life to this subject. I only debate with my equals. All others I teach.
The definition of esoteric: intended for or likely to be understood by only a small number of people with specialized knowledge or interest. This is a very esoteric time that we live in.
Very esoteric. And that is why we look at stuff and it seems extremely obvious, and to others, they have no clue.
Right.
And that's the thing that I'm learning to kind of just be okay with that. You know what I'm saying? When you are trying to not convince people, but you're trying to explain to people what's going on, and you know, and they don't see it. You know, at some points you can get frustrated, but you have to learn that it's no need to be frustrated, because actually everybody's time is, they're doing exactly what they need to do for themselves. And I've had to learn that my journey is not somebody else's journey, and nor should it be. You know what I'm saying? You can drop some information, they can take it, they may use it later on, but you just continue to drop your information, but not get to a point where it's combative, to a point where you're saying, you know, disparaging things about them. It's just who they are. I mean, it is what it is, you know, and it's hard because it's a struggle sometimes, because some of this stuff is like, what? Like, how do you not know this? You know, and it's easy to go down that road, like, you know, but we live in an esoteric time.
And I have to say, as a Black man in America, it's very dangerous territory for me to speak as if I'm attempting to convert people or convince them to see it a certain way. That's a very dangerous place for me to exist in.
And when you say, why do you say that though, Elijah?
Because I'm perceived as, there is, as a Black man in America, especially with locks hanging all the way down my back, a lot of environments that I go into, I'm seen as a threat before I even open my mouth.
Right.
So once I open my mouth to speak and I articulate with a certain level of intelligence, it definitely challenges people automatically. Before I even open up my mouth, some people are already afraid of what I might say or do. Like I said, not just being a Black man in America, but also having locks hanging down my back. I go into certain environments, people are already building up their own perception of who they think I am.
Right.
And so once I start if I was to start speaking on things that challenge their belief systems or their comfort level, then for them, that's a confirmation to the premeditated thoughts of who they think I am. It kind of confirms that within them, and it kind of validates that fear.
But do you think that, like, when you're saying that, you mean any person, anybody, or do you mean like anybody?
No, if I come into your home, I don't have that problem. If I go to Jamaica, I don't have that problem. It depends on the people and the environment, of course. But I will say that people that don't prejudge me, people that don't feel intimidated by my presence, those people are fewer and farther in between in my life than the people that would.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think because it's interesting, because over the past few years, we've kind of been in environments that we're probably more of the minority. And the perception would be that, and the perception may be, I don't know what people's perceptions are, but they could be. But when we lead with not having a judgment about a person, what we get back is a lot of times people who are extremely nice, people who don't have, and I can't, because we don't understand what's in people's minds. And because we don't ask the question, what was your perception about me before you met me? Or what's the perception about my husband before he said something to you? Because we don't have that dialogue, we don't know. But what I can say is by having a dialogue, you find that people, whether they had some inappropriate perception about you or not, it's quickly diminished and it quickly changes. So I always, because I always go back, and it's not 100%. So understand it's not 100%, but I always go back to myself. I feel like I have done things in my life where I have created situations where I justified somebody else's behavior. Oh, they're like that because they this or that, when actually it was just me. It was just how I felt. I felt a certain way, so I projected that onto them when they never felt that way. It was never them feeling that way. It was only me feeling that they felt that way. You understand? So I said I had a certain feeling inside, and I projected it onto them and said, well, they don't ever do this because they don't this, they the, when it was really me. It was really my issue. And so when I stopped feeling that way, it was nothing, like it just kind of dissipated. It's just interesting because sometimes we can, and I'm not saying this is 100% of the time, because clearly we have people who have perceptions about us. We can drive up in a Mercedes and they still have a perception about who we are because of the color of our skin. And I understand that. But I do want to somewhat discuss how what I found is that when we break those, when we go in without judgment and strike up conversations, people tend to be just as nice and they converse and they have, and I don't know what they think when we leave. And because it's not like we have like these major friendships and we're like people come, it's not like that. It's just one day you might see somebody and talk to them and they have a great conversation and then we go about our business. So I'm just asking about that.
So this is the thing. We could be talking about racism. We could be talking about various forms of emotions. When you find yourself in life exposed to other people projecting their ills onto you, it's easy now to take that on as your own self-identity.
Yes.
And now, even when you travel outside of those people, because that's been projected onto you so much, you may start to believe it in a way where you feel like everybody views you that way.
Yes.
You can be called ugly all your life, as from a child into an adult. And then when you become an adult, you start thinking that you're ugly and you think everybody looks at you as ugly just because maybe your aunt or your uncle or your parents told you that so often. You know, you could be called blackie if you're dark skinned. And then you grow up and you don't value. You might be totally beautiful as a dark skinned person, but you think of yourself as less and you think other people view you as less. Then you start using skin lightener cream and things to try to that blackness because that was imposed on you. So I had to go through that. Right. I had to go through that evolutionary cycle where I had, once I began to understand what racism looked like, I had to begin to understand that that's something that was projected onto me. And then I had to learn to become comfortable with being in environments where I might think people might be judging me, but they're not.
Right.
For example, I work with autistic children. In New Jersey, I have to go out to different homes to meet with different families for their child. And in some of these homes, these are mansions and very well-off families. Mm-hmm. And at one time, I wasn't driving a nice car, but I was driving. But I would go to these homes and I would feel this big, right? Because these are very well-off families. I'm driving an average car. I'm walking into this mansion and average clothes.
Right.
And I'm thinking that these people are looking at me a certain way, like, right? And I had to condition my thought process to not come in with that.
Exactly.
Right? Even though I may have been treated this way by other people in the past, because some of my clients are that way.
No, you're right. Exactly. Exactly.
And the irony of it is that my clients that have treated me that way didn't live in mansions.
Right. That's something.
Weren't well off.
Right.
But because they treat
Yep.
that way, it was easy now for me, if I had so chosen to embrace that perception. And now when I walk into this home, but even with me having all of the knowledge of all of this, I still had to go through my own emotional breakthroughs in order
Yep.
so that I could feel comfortable. In this,
Yep.
the family that I'm referring to, they were a Chinese family. And when I say they were a Chinese family, I mean they were Chinese. Like, they would send for family straight from China, and they would come. This was a Chinese family. They spoke Chinese, but they were the nicest people in the world. Whenever they spoke Chinese around me, they would interpret it for me. You know what I mean? They
Wow. Out of respect.
were right, exactly. And it really took a lot of self-conditioning for me to allow myself to feel comfortable in this environment. Because I grew up in an environment
Yep.
dealing with Chinese people. If they talking Chinese around you, they probably saying something bad.
They talking about you. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
by the end of
It's similar to like the clip you sent. The clip you sent, what the lady was saying. If your man can be out here doing wonderful things, but if he comes home and that woman is saying, you know, good, you're this and that, that's what he holds inside. And so you're right. And that's the challenge. And that's the challenge, is that we can only um we can only control how we act. We can only control what we do. And so if we lead with love, whether or not we get it in return, we can't control other people. But what we can do is lead with love, lead with kindness, and that's it. We're going to go into a situation being kind and being who we are. And if somebody doesn't want to bring that back, then that's fine. That's on them. But I know we can. And I think that sometimes if we lead with that, what it does is break down, you know, it just, what you give off is kind of sometimes what you get back. So I'm just saying, I've had personal situations, and that was one revelation for me that I always, and it's always like that. It's just, I had this, like my mom, you know, has a nice house and had a great job and all this stuff, you know. And when we were living back in Baltimore, we lived in a little, not a row home, but a little semi-detached home. And, you know, I always felt like, oh, she don't want to come over here because this is too low, or this is, you know what I'm saying? That was how I felt. I felt that way. She didn't feel it. She didn't say she felt like that. I felt that way about where I lived. And so I projected that onto her as if she was the one saying that to me. No, she never said that. That's not her issue. That was only my issue. It was my internal issue about this, that I have projected onto a person to justify how I feel like. And that was just so, it came to me like, Lord, I mean, all this time I've been projecting this ridiculous issues, my own issues, onto somebody else who never did anything to warrant that.
mm-hmm.
And I had to check myself. That's the thing. I've had to check myself so many times about so many things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the part of this spiritual awakening has really done, is I have gone inside and I've recognized that the majority of the stuff that needs to get done is only with me. And once I start changing me, the external changes. When I start addressing what's going on in me, what happens to me stops happening. And so I'm like, you know, this is amazing. You just really recognize how much control you have as an individual over what happens to you. The way you perceive the world, the way that you perceive others. If you perceive others in a negative light, then that's what you're going to get back, because that's what it's like a mirror. Okay, if you want to perceive others in a positive way, whether or not they give that back to you 100% of the time, it's not going to happen. But what you can do the majority of the time you will get back what you give off. And I truly believe that. And I've seen it. I've seen it in my own life. And that's the only thing I can really, you know, discuss is what I've seen personally happen to me, is that I've changed some things, and Lord have mercy, they've changed what goes on around me.
And
Everything I hated I was bringing to me. And it would keep on coming. Oh, you don't like it? All right, I'm gonna keep on giving it to you because that's what you're giving off. You giving that off, I'm gonna keep on giving it to you. And when I said no more, it stopped. So
what I call that is learning to walk in your own authority.
right.
And what I found is that even with people that might prejudge me, when I walk in my authority, even the people that prejudge me got to stand out of my way or bow down.
There you go. There you go.
So I've learned to limit, minimize, or eliminate anything that has to do with stepping outside and walking in my own authority.
Yep.
So whenever I feel those jitters, that feeling of I don't belong or somebody judging me, I automatically flip that switch and say, regardless of what the case is, I'm gonna walk in my authority.
That's right.
That's right. From there, we're gonna deal with it from there. We're not gonna deal with
That's right.
The perspective of me being worried.
That's right.
With it from the perspective of I'm confident in who I am. And I'm putting my best foot forward. Now you figure out what to do from there. And
exactly.
With that said,
it's not your issue any longer. It's not your issue at all.
Right. And with that said, it's an everyday struggle. It's an everyday process.
Without a doubt. And I always try to lead when I talk to people. When I say these things, I'm not saying it because I have it all under control. Clearly, I don't. It's a work in progress. It's an everyday battle because we can flip back with the quickness. I know I can. You know what I'm saying? I can flip, you know, so it's always trying to be aware of those internal feelings, what they keep calling your ego, that ego that keeps on going back to somebody saying, somebody making me, that ego is a problem, you know, and if we can kind of deal with that ego and not always lead with that, we'll be in a better place. So.
And I had a couple men who are older than me come into my life and recognize my struggle and say to me, you know, Elinaja, you got to learn to joke more often. Lead with a joke. You can really make people feel more comfortable by joking with them. I had a couple women come into my life and say, yo, you have a beautiful smile. You should really learn how to use your charm and your smile to your advantage. Now, my life, the way my life has been set up, I'm learning to smile more. But there was a time where rarely, you would be hard pressed to find a picture of me smiling.
Wow.
And till this day, I'm just now entering into a space where I'm starting to ask myself, well, how do I joke? Because I don't find shit funny.
Well, you just made me laugh with that one. It wasn't a joke, but that was sure enough funny.
I find myself making people laugh by accident, right? Where I'm at with it now, like.
Right, it's all good though. That's true. Levity is good though, Elinaja. Laughter is a wonderful thing. Laughter is not taking. I mean, because you know, we have to take stuff seriously. But if you look at the big scheme of things, and if you believe that your life here is just a blink of an eye, and that your soul is there's so much more, then we don't necessarily always need to take things so seriously, because that's where the stress comes in. That's where the weight comes in. And so, you know, like if somebody were to say, this is how much time you have on this earth, and you knew that from the beginning, you would probably live your life a lot different. You would live your life to the fullest. because you would recognize that your time is limited and you would do everything that you could do without any concern. And so we have to kind of, you know, and that's what I'm trying to do, because I think for me, I'm a little serious as well. I'm not so much that I laugh a lot, and I joke too, but I still am a very serious person. And so I think that that's what my challenge is to stop worrying about what I need to do and what I need to do. Just do it. Just do what you want to do today. Live for today. Not be always consumed about what's happening tomorrow and the day after and the day after and the week and next year. Just live in the moment, because what you find out is that you're missing out on living. You don't even live because you're so consumed with what's coming up. You're not even living. You're just existing. You know what I'm saying? I don't want to just exist, because I'm always worrying about tomorrow and then the next day and then the next day. You know, so I have to live freer. You know what I'm saying? Be lighthearted, have some levity, and not be so all consumed about what's going to happen next week and tomorrow. And because then you're not living in the moment, and that's a problem. That's one thing I'm struggling with, is I have to live in the moment. I have to be happy today and be good today and not be concerned about what's going on tomorrow. And so that's a struggle. But yes, it's important to be lighthearted, because in the scheme of things, we just can't let these things that we see, you know, bring us down or even take too seriously, because a lot of it is not even real. I mean, when I say real, I mean real in terms of true. It's like we're watching a movie and they're putting on all these things that are evoking emotions, and I can't live like that anymore. So, yeah.
One of the things that I've been practicing most recently is telling myself, rather than focus on how much progress I'm making in a day, focus on being present in a day.
Me too. That's it, Eleanor, being present. Because you'll find you'll be 10 years down the line and you've not been present. That's some crazy feeling. You're not present. You've existed. I don't want to exist. I want to be present every day and enjoy every day for whatever that day brings.
Right, right.
And that's a difficult place to be.
From there, I can progress. First, start out by being present, and then from there, I can look and say, okay, this is what I got done. But I used to wake up and it was all about, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I would judge myself based on how much I accomplished or didn't accomplish. Now I judge myself by how much I'm actually present.
Right.
How much I'm actually focused, how much I'm actually in tune.
Right.
With myself and what's going on around me.
Right.
And then
go ahead.
From there, I find myself naturally tapping into the things that I need to accomplish.
And I just recently started just beginning every day with just kind of going through what I'm grateful about, you know, just making sure that I'm keeping that at the forefront of my mind, you know, and it's like a balance, because you want so much, you want to do so much, and I'm never content with just, you know, being right here. So I'm always acknowledging what I'm grateful for.
That's
and
right.
Most of the time it's very small things. I've always been grateful. Like, I'm grateful about the trees. I'm grateful to see my plants. I swear I am. I'm grateful, you know, clearly about my family and my, you know, I have a roof over my head and those kind of things. But those kind of, like, just looking out and seeing the trees and seeing, you know, the sun and seeing my plants that are growing all around that are wonderful. You know, those things I'm grateful for, but I'm trying to, you know, that's my way of kind of being present.